If you've ever spent a summer in DC before, you know that it is absolutely awful. It's muggy and humid, and on its worst days can go way past 100 degrees. Now, let's say you're there to look at the monuments and you're walking down the National Mall. If you were to walk from the Capitol building to the other side, which is the Lincoln Memorial, that's more than 2 miles apart and is around a 45-minute walk. Let's say that you've been walking for 30 minutes and this muggy DC air is really getting to you, and you come across this. A beautiful, ornate fountain, right next to the reflection pond on the other side of the Lincoln Memorial. On either side of this huge fountain, there are semicircular walkways lined with pillars, which have the names of all 48 states of the United States at the time of 1945, as well as DC, the territories of Alaska and Hawaii, and the Commonwealth of the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, and the US Virgin Islands. It's an ornate memorial with many different parts to it. Some have even called it pompous, overbearing, and bombastic. But in any case, it doesn't give off a solemn vibe. In this summer heat, the cool water seems welcoming, and you start to think, wouldn't it be nice to just dip my feet in the water? And look, there are even little steps that look like they're made for people to walk into the fountain. So you decide to sit down and wade in the water. The question is this acceptable? Or is this disrespectful? For the longest time, the World War II Memorial used to have these signs that read, "Please respect the memorial, no waiting, no coins." But relatively recently, they changed their stance. Now they have a sign that reads, "Honor our veterans. Sitting with your feet in the water is okay. Walking in the water is not okay." So according to the sign, the difference between sitting and standing is what distinguishes whether this action is acceptable or not. Maybe the idea was that sitting would encourage reflection, but many were quick to point out that this distinction probably has nothing to do with honoring the memories of our veterans. It's probably more about liability. At some point, the people in charge of the memorial must have realized that it's impossible to stop people from going into the fountain, but it would be a problem if anybody slipped in the fountain or even drowned. Therefore, they would allow people to wade in the water, but would discourage people from walking around. But I know that people still walk in the fountains, especially children. And I know that people also let their puppies dip their paws in the water as well. So it seems like there's something about this memorial that feels kind of casual, somewhere where we're supposed to splash around. This brings us back to the design we mentioned earlier. When the memorial was first built, there were two major complaints. One was of the design, and the other was of location. Let's start with the design. The Washington Post described the memorial as a hodgepodge of cliché and Soviet-style pomposity. On a similar note, the Philadelphia Inquirer wrote, "This pompous style was also favored by Hitler and Mussolini." So those who dislike the design of the memorial feel that it's un-American. There's also another group of people who don't necessarily hate the design of the memorial. It's just that it feels as though the people in charge of the memorial wanted a place of quiet reflection. But the memorial they got was one of celebration. And that's not necessarily a problem. There's no one way to have a memorial. And of all the memorials in DC, the World War II Memorial is the one that makes the most sense as a more victorious memorial. Broadly speaking, World War II was a successful war for America. We won. Democracy won, and we can thank our modern American existence to the fact that we won this war. Compare that, for example, to another war, like Vietnam, which is traditionally not considered a very successful war. People that died in Vietnam didn't die for victory, and many may consider that those lives were wasted, versus for those that died in World War II, the sacrifice was worth it. But this doesn't change the fact that many lives were lost in World War II, and this memorial doesn't really provide a space for veterans and family members of people who died in World War II to come and mourn the deaths of their friends and family members. So the question becomes, should this memorial have been something for the people, or should it have been something for the veterans and the family members? The other point of criticism I mentioned earlier was the question of place. The World War II Memorial is actually a very recent addition to the National Mall. Construction was completed in 2004, and they actually sped up the process to get this memorial approved. They wanted this memorial to be completed while there were still veterans alive. So that makes it seem as though this should have been for the veterans, right? Anyways, the location was chosen to be between the Washington Memorial and the Lincoln Memorial. This area just used to be an open plaza, so you'd think it wouldn't be too problematic. But this open plaza used to be used as a major place of protest. I want you guys to take a look at this photo. This photo is from August 28, 1963. It was the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. This name might not ring a bell, but I'm certain you'll recognize this.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Yup, this is when Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his very famous speech, I Have a Dream. Let's take a look at this picture again. This is where the World War II memorial is. A memorial which has been called ostentatious and aesthetically fascist, is sitting in the spot that is the epitome of a democracy, a place of demonstration. This feels problematic. So in the end, how does this tie back to waiting in the World War II memorial? Well, could this be considered an act of reclaiming a space? I mean, it's really hard to say. I personally like the World War II memorial because it is so lively. You see a lot of happy, healthy American kids just running around. And to me, that's the point. This memorial is a thank you to those who lost their lives. Thanks to them, we're still here. And I think maybe the best way to thank them is by practicing our freedom. Go ahead and wade in the water. Go ahead and protest. Just remember to say thank you. We wouldn't be doing this without you.